token goes into the podcast goes online. Audience is online. Our audience.
Okay, so icebreaker question for today's episode. So, if you could get rid of any one thing from existence, it will have never existed ever.
Wow, that's that's quite the question. That's got some implications to it.
Yeah,
for sure.
Absolutely does. Yeah.
Okay, you can get rid of it and it never existed. Can you then invent it?
Sure. Why not? Yeah. Why not?
All right, I got mine.
All right, we'll discuss it at the end of the episode, and we'll see you on the flip side here.
Yeah. Your local video store card.
A comic book in your back pocket.
Games with no tutorials.
Music you had to discover.
And drinking water straight from the hose.
These are the things us millennials remember fondly. We are the Jennings brothers.
Join us after the streetlights come on
as we race our bikes from the top of the hill
right down memory lane.
Exchange those quarters because this podcast takes tokens.
All right, and we are, drum roll, talking about Jaws, 1975 horror. It was really branded as a horror movie.
Horror movie.
I mean, it's not a horror movie, but I think it was branded as a horror movie, sort of.
I can see that. Yeah, because it was like watching it. It feels like a horror movie. Like it's got kind of the beats as a horror movie. Yeah. So it's about a small coastal town of Amity Island. I think it was like over in Massachusetts or something. It's supposed to be kind of like around Martha's Vineyard or that area, Martha's
something
Vineyard.
like that.
I think it was filmed at Martha's Vineyard, wasn't it?
Was it filmed at Martha's Vineyard?
Oh, I don't know. I'm maybe sipping on things there.
Yeah. Well, who knows? It's a pretty place in the movie. Just the water is not so great.
Oh yeah, filmed in Martha's Vineyard.
Yep. Is it?
Yep.
Great. Yeah. So the place is terrorized by a great white shark. Just really, the whole movie is just it's eating people. And it's this thing, and there's three guys that got to go hunt this down, and that is the movie premise, and it's great. Released on June 20th, 1975, directed by Steven Spielberg. It is credited as the first summer blockbuster.
Wow.
I think we had discussed that in our E.T. episode, because I think I originally thought E.T. was the first summer blockbuster, but it wasn't. This was credited as that. Budget of $9 million, grossed $476.5 million, which is really good even today, but especially back in 1975.
For a $7 million budget, that's quite the return. And opening weekend was $7 million alone, so they made back their money.
Almost made their money back. Stars, is it Roy Scheider? Is it Scheider?
I've heard Scheider.
Plays the chief.
I've heard about
Scheider. River Shaw, and of course, Richard Dreyfuss. I love Richard Dreyfuss. Was nominated for Best Picture, and it spawned 3 sequels of vastly lesser quality. But this one is just absolutely fantastic. I love this movie. I enjoy it every time I watch it. It is in my top 10 favorite movies. It is so good.
Wow.
And I really feel like in the pantheon of just greatest movies ever made, this is going to be in there somewhere.
Okay.
So
I can agree. I can agree. I mean, I'm going to go against you a little bit here. It's not a top 10 movie for me.
It's not one of my. It's not one of my favorite movies. In fact, I don't know if I would say that I really enjoyed this movie a whole lot. I would say I appreciate this movie a lot. I really do appreciate this movie for what it is. I enjoyed it the first time, but it's not a movie that I'm going to go back and rewatch a whole lot. It's a movie, well, like I said, I appreciate for what it is. It is a fantastically done movie. It's got a lot of great things to it. I just feel like, I think for me, it's a little slow and it's a little long is my problem I have with the movie. But at the same point, I'm watching the movie again and I'm thinking to myself, I always find this movie to be a little long and a little slow, but I can't think of what I would change or cut out of this movie to make it not slow or long feeling, because it kind of needs to have that. Like this, that's them building the tension throughout this movie, is stretching all this stuff out. And really, they're not stretching anything out. They're hitting all these beats. There's just so much to it.
Yeah. And I think that's what makes, so if I could categorize this as a horror movie, I would do so based on that, on how they draw out everything. A good horror movie draws that out. You don't really see the monster, or the shark in this case, until really the end of the movie is when you actually see, like, you see bits of it. Yeah, but you don't see the full thing until really the end of the movie, when it jumps up on the end of the boat.
Yeah.
But I don't know, like the scene, the opening scene with the, well, let's just say it how it is. They paint the picture of this kind of promiscuous girl running off into the ocean, right? Yeah. To swim with this boy.
Skinny dip.
And there's a classic horror trope of, you know, she's going to get it. And it, even now when I watch that, it's hard to watch because I like horror movies, but I don't like slashers. I don't like to see people suffer in horror movies. I don't like seeing that. And that scene in the beginning, horror. That's yes. And it still bothers me in this movie when her and Quint are getting killed, because like she's getting pulled and then she's screaming like, "Oh God, please help me!" And then, you know, she gets pulled under.
Yeah.
And then Quint is like, really, like, he does not want to get eaten by the shark, and he's trying to kick at it and everything, and then it bites into him, and you just see him like just in so much pain. And it's so hard for me to watch scenes like that.
Yeah. Quint's death was very visceral. You felt it.
Yes. It was. And it was terrible because it's really his biggest fear, right?
Yeah.
Because he goes on that excellent, like one of the best monologues in cinema, I think, where that whole scene is great, where they're in the boat and they're showing their scars and everything, and him and Richard Dreyfuss are playing off each other so well. And
they're building that, they kind of come to an understanding in that moment too of each other.
Yes.
Like, he really was dismissing Richard Dreyfuss's character for the longest time, Hooper. And at that point you can see them kind of like come eye to eye and be like, "Oh, okay, I see you for who you are, and I can appreciate you now," or whatever.
Yeah. And I think all three main characters in this movie are just written so well.
Yeah.
And they each kind of have their own individual motivations, more or less. You know, Chief wants to, make his town safe. And then, you know, Quint, I think is it doesn't really outright say it, but I think he's trying to get revenge somewhat on what happened when he was in the war. And then he's wanting to get
at the same time, I think the recognition of having taken this thing down, because there's that point where the chief goes to call in help and he like bashes the radio, because he doesn't.
He's a maniac.
Yeah. And then, Hooper, I think, is just, he's sort of like Chief in a way where he's like, I don't want anybody else to get killed by this thing. But I think he also has a fascination as an oceanographer of what's driving this. I've never seen a shark like this. Yeah. I don't know. It's so good. And Hooper's my favorite of the three. Yeah. I every time I watch it, I think Richard Dreyfuss does just an excellent job.
Yes.
With this character.
Yes. Yeah. There was a lot of, rewatching it again, because I haven't seen this movie in, I'd say at least 4 years. I watched it probably about 4 years ago as Bruce wanted to watch it. He's really into movies, and this is like a classic, not an 80s movie. This is a 70s movie, but it's 70s considered movie. Like, I guess you want to consider it. Could you consider it an 80s movie? I don't know. It's a classic retro movie. And he was really getting into those types of things, Ghostbusters and all that other stuff. So he really wanted to watch Jaws. So a few years back, I sat down with him when we watched Jaws, and I was like, I'll watch it with you, but I'm telling you right now, it's going to be too slow. You're not going to be into it, and you're going to get bored with it. But we'll sit and we watch it, and we sat and we watched it, and he played and did other things while it was on, but he stayed in the room for it instead of leaving. And as that tension built and they got closer and closer towards the end, he stopped playing and started watching more. Yeah. Until the very end, you watch the last scene, because that's where all the action is. But that was the last time I watched it. And I think whenever I rewatched it that time, I went into it kind of poisoned, in the fact that I was like, I don't enjoy this movie. I think that the problem with movies like this that I have is they get really hyped up as far as like being like really great movies, and this is like a fantastic film and you should really love it for like this reason or that. And then I go and I watch them and I'm like, it's not what everybody said it was. It's not this hype that I've been built up to believe it is. And it becomes a bit of a letdown. And I think the first time I watched this, around my early 20s, it was that for me. It was a bit of a letdown. I was shown it by somebody who was like, this is a great movie. You'll really enjoy this movie. This is like one of my favorite movies. I think it was the 25th anniversary DVD. They did like a big special DVD for it. And I bought that, and I was like, okay, we'll sit down and we'll watch this. And, I was just disappointed with it. I didn't enjoy it that much. I mean, it was okay. I got it. I appreciated it. And, there were certain beats in it. And then, so whenever I sat down and I watched it again with Bruce, I kind of had that same like poisoned mindset of, I'm not going to enjoy this. So I just didn't enjoy it. But then this last time, I think I enjoyed it more. And I got more of it, and I appreciated it a little more. And watching Richard Dreyfuss, his delivery on things was fantastic. I really enjoyed it. And I gotta say, I've never really been like a huge Richard Dreyfuss fan. And I don't mean like I'm not a Richard Dreyfuss fan, like I don't appreciate him or anything like that. I just mean like I can't think of a movie where I'm like, I love this Richard Dreyfuss movie. So
right. Yeah.
Like, but I mean, when you see him and stuff, you're like, oh yeah, he's good. I enjoy him. He does a great job. I guess, What About Bob was a movie that, he was in that I always enjoyed him in, but he was kind of the bad guy in that movie.
He was.
You're not made to like him. That may be my only reference for him. I don't know, but this performance was really good. And I picked up on some things on it. I was like, oh man, there's like a little like subtlety to the way he's doing things. And I appreciate that. And then Shaw as Quint, man, that guy, he delivered on that character. Oh, I don't think I've seen him in anything else that I can think of. So I don't know if that's just like, he's just playing Shaw, or if like he's really playing a character. But if I got to believe that that's just like a fantastic acting job on his part.
Yeah.
And then, like you said, all three of them in that main cast, great. And then this is another problem I have with movies of this time is that core cast, fantastic, great group of actors. Then you get one layer beyond that, and the acting is like mid-level. And then you get just beyond that, and the acting is like, I don't know, your Community's production of Spamalot. I mean, it's just awful.
Your Z-list characters.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, I get that. I'm trying to figure out what I can put my finger on here, but yeah, I see what you're saying, I guess, with that. I think the guy that plays the mayor is a little bit stiff, and I don't know if that's because of the writing, like, because they don't really give him much depth.
Yeah,
it's just like and I get it. I get his motivation. The town earns most of their income through tourism, and he doesn't want the town to lose out on that. But then he's just like, well, let's just open up the beaches, even though there's been these attacks, and let's just kind of sweep it under the rug. And yeah, I don't know. He seems kind of a tool, you know.
Very much so. Yeah, smarmy.
Yeah. And then I feel so bad, like the one death that really gets me, and it's harder for me now to watch it as a parent, but it's when that little boy gets killed, and you see like the blood come up and everything, and I'm like feeling for his mom, because his mom's got to be like, because he'd asked to go back out, and she's like, okay, 10 more minutes, like if she just would have made him stay in, you know. And it's so hard to watch that scene. And like, after I watch that, I'm just like, I want to go out and kill this dang shark now. You know, I want to take care of this thing, because that's not cool, you know.
Let's go on a shark hunt.
And yeah. But yeah, I don't know. But like you're talking about with Quint, and and just how River Shaw played that character. The introduction of that character, when he just like he's just dragging his nails down the chalkboard in the middle of that meeting. Oh yeah.
I don't know if you've ever dragged your nails across chalkboard, but that hurts.
No, does it?
And that's not a fun feeling. And on top of that, to create that noise, that vibrates through your fingertips, and you're pulling back your fingernails. That hurts. Ugh. So yeah, that was some commitment to do that. Yeah. Either the character or the actor's part, one of the two. But yeah, like that was. You don't see that very often though. The fingernails on the chalkboard. Motif there or whatever.
Yeah, you don't. So, yeah, I know you said that this isn't like your favorite movie, but do you have like a favorite scene from it? Is there something that like really stuck out with you that even on rewatches you enjoy watching? Or?
Oh yeah, there was definitely. I'm trying to remember right now. There was a. Well, I think it was more about. There were certain things as far as like filmmaking that really I really liked. Like whenever they're on the beach right before that boy gets eaten, and or I should say it's right after the boy gets eaten, and they do that dolly zoom on Chief Brody, like like that, like they push in on him, but like he stays the same size and frame or whatever, but then you see the background and everything shifting around. That particular technique I always find so fascinating. Like just to achieve that, you really got to like time out your zoom with the movement of the camera so that the person stays in the foreground, framed the same way. Yeah. But that background compresses or depresses, whichever way you go with that shot. And that I always like those little shots like that. Those are always pretty fun. And then like Yeah, I think that scene on the boat with Quint whenever they're comparing scars, that one stands out. That's a pretty good one. That's just a neat little character bonding building moment that
yes,
I appreciate very much. Yeah.
I think I probably said this a few minutes ago, but I do firmly believe that's the best scene in the movie.
Yeah.
Is just that whole interaction between the three of them. And yeah, how it does build up to, him ultimately getting eaten. And then it makes more sense as he's like, because he looks terrified as that shark is like trying to bite down. And he's like, I survived this once. I don't want to die this way, and it's rough to watch that. It's so rough.
Or, I'm remembering the part where they're, I guess it's that night before Brody goes out again or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And he's sitting there talking to the wife and everything. And the kids are out. Or maybe it's not the night. I think it might have been that morning. I don't know. They're on the patio and the kids are out on one of the boats after I think like the first or the second shark attack. And he's like, hey, I told you stay out of the water or come back in or whatever. And she's like, oh, just let them play. They're fine. It's not that deep and all this other stuff. And the whole time he's looking at this. Yeah, and he's looking at this book with shark attacks on it and everything. He had set down and she picks it up and she looks at it and sees the shark hitting the side of the boat. And she yells at the boys, hey, your dad said come back inside. And, just like quickly changes her tune.
Yeah.
I love that. That was great.
Yeah.
And then the other was what was it? I had it and then I forgot it. But okay. So I gotta wonder, why isn't everybody's mad at Chief Brody for not closing down the beaches, but nobody's saying, is it his call on that, or wouldn't that be the mayor? Wouldn't that fall under the mayor?
Well, it's the mayor's call because
but nobody's saying boo to the mayor.
Because after the first attack, like when they find that girl's body, and Brody's immediate reaction is to, okay, we got to shut these beaches. Yeah. And he gets his deputy to go write up all these signs and everything, and they start putting them out. And then that's when the mayor comes to him and he's like, we can't be doing this. Like we've got to keep these things open. Yeah. I think he gives him like 24 hours or something ludicrous like that. But yeah, like I feel like every one of minus the girls at the beginning, like those other two deaths with the boy and then that guy that's in the boat near his son, are totally on the mayor. That's absolutely on it. And you remember the mayor is like telling one of his cronies or whatever, he's like, somebody needs to go out in the water. There's nobody out in the water.
Oh, yeah.
Go ahead and
it's
go
like,
out.
Why don't you go out there and swim? Just, set the example.
Yeah.
That other guy's like, oh, God. You can see the look on his face. Yeah. And then they bring their kids with them, too.
They bring, like, their grandkids or whatever it is. I'm like, what? There's no way I'd be doing that. No. I'd be like, you go out there and swim first. You're the mayor.
You want to set the example. You need to be the leader.
You want to set an example. I ain't doing it. Yeah. And that was something, like, I really, really found it hard to find things to nitpick in this movie because, one, I think it's just my personal love for the movie. It's hard for me to look past or to, see certain things like that. But then also, like, I really, really do think, like, this is... Not that Steven Spielberg is like, infallible God or anything, but this is a Steven Spielberg movie, and his movies are like pretty well put together, you know. But there is that scene. It's the same scene where he tells his buddy to go out in the water, and they've got those like the... I don't know, not the sheriff's department, but they've got all these guys that are on boats out in the water, like watching, as people swim. And they're, on the radio, they're like, do you see anything? And they're like, I don't know. There's too much of a reflection on the water. Did none of these guys think to wear sunglasses out? Like, nobody's wearing sunglasses.
They gotta get a good vision. Well, I mean, it's 70s. I don't know what sunglasses technology was at in 1977, but I can't imagine it was that great. No. I got a nitpick for you. Okay. So as they're rolling the kid into the ER, his son is being rolled into the ER, you know, because he got pulled out of the water and he was just in shock, wasn't actually attacked or anything like that. So they're rolling him into the ER, and his mom asks him, you know, is there anything I can get you? Anything you want? You know, do you want any ice cream? He's like, yes, coffee. He asked for coffee flavored ice cream. This kid wants coffee. What kid wants coffee flavored ice cream? Steven Spielberg, come on now. I don't think he had kids at this point. Maybe he didn't know any better. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe not. Yeah. Yeah,
But yeah, that was okay. That's my one nitpick from the movie.
Yeah. Well, I liked you've got the character building with Brody, and I liked like how his little boy is there with him, and he's like all upset about stuff that's been going on. He's like, give us a kiss, you know, and all that. So you've got like that bonding there.
Yeah.
And I don't know, it kind of shows the character of him, you know, some more. Like he's really a family man.
Yeah.
And, you know, and then I really enjoyed the scene where Hooper comes over. He just kind of invites himself into the house. Like he does. Yeah. He comes in and then he walks into the kitchen, and Brody's wife is like, oh, can I help you? And he's like, oh, well, the door was unlocked, you know, or whatever. and he just like brings some wine or whatever. But that whole conversation,
I didn't know which one you want.
Yeah. And I'm watching it and I'm like, man, like these guys barely know each other, and conversation really is becoming a lost art with just people that you don't know so well. You know what I mean? And
everybody's on guard.
They are. Yeah. And, you know, you're thinking in your head, oh, I don't want to say something that's stupid. I don't want to, you know, want people to think of me this way, you know, or that way. Or, but in that scene, like he's unloading like some heavy stuff to even like Brody's wife, you know, and all this. And I'm like, golly, that really makes me nostalgic for something that I've never really experienced. I've always kind of been a shy guy, and as I've grown older, I have a little easier time talking to people, but not on that level.
The conversation's very surface level for sure.
Yeah. Like I try to make it. You know, I found like you ask people kind of about themselves, they're a little more open, you know, to get a conversation rolling with you. But I don't know, that whole scene just really, really struck me, and I'm like, oh, that's something to aspire to a little bit, is to try to, you know, find that spark of conversation again, where you can just
be a little more Hooper.
Everybody, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. I think we could all stand to be a little more open in our conversations, and that's kind of like a two-way thing. So not just be more open in the conversations that you have and the things that you say to other people, but be open to receiving information and conversation from somebody as well, even though it may not be something you agree with or like, and or maybe a thought that you never had before. It's okay. Be open to it, and you don't necessarily have to agree with them, and you don't have to tell them that right then and there. You can continue the conversation in a different way. You just shift and move, and we can talk about other things. There are an endless number of topics that we can have conversations on. You don't want to talk about elephants? That's fine. Let's talk about sharks.
Yeah. That's right.
So there were 3 sequels to this movie. There was Jaws, Jaws 2, Jaws 3D, and Jaws 3D.
Yes, it wasn't Jaws 3. It was Jaws 3D.
Jaws 3D.
And Roy Scheider, so he came back for Jaws 2.
Yeah.
Richard Dreyfuss did not. Obviously, River Shaw didn't come back for the sequel. Yeah. His ghost is floating around. You know, there's.
You could have done a prequel.
But yeah, there we go. He came back for the second one. The third one, I was reading somewhere for 3D, they had asked him to come back, and he was like, something to the effect of like, God himself couldn't make me come back for a sequel for this movie. Like, he just did. So they ended up writing him off as like, his character, Brody had like a heart attack in between 2 and 3 or something like that. But yeah, I remember watching. I've watched 2, and I think I've seen them all. They used to run them on like Turner Classic Movies or maybe AMC or something like that. And I've watched them all. The other ones are just so completely forgettable. Oh, yeah. I couldn't even really tell you what happened. I mean, it's silly because it's like why make a sequel to this? Like Spielberg didn't want to do it and he didn't do it. Like they had shot the idea at him and he's like, I think this was a good enough movie for just one movie. And it completely is. I mean, they kill the shark at the end of the movie. What are they,
the shark's family is going to come back for him in the second one, right?
Yeah.
I've never seen any of the sequels, so I don't know other than I guess it's in the same location and it involves the same people and another shark shows up. Island
again. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. And I think like the third one or the fourth one is his oldest son is trying to kill a shark or something like that.
Is the shark getting revenge in Jaws Revenge, or is the son getting revenge in Jaws Revenge?
Yeah, that's got to be. I don't know. But it wouldn't surprise me either way, because I guess that's one thing I can nitpick about this. So the shark is an animal, and Hooper makes it clear like these things do 2 things: they swim and they eat.
Yep,
and that's all they do. And really the boat scene, when they go out and they first see it, and Quint shoots it with the barrel. It's really from that point on that I feel like the shark kind of almost becomes human and has vengeance, because it's like, it's like following them around, and like when it jumps out of the water and lands on the boat, as cool as that scene is to watch, what'd you say?
It's coming for him.
It's coming for him. It's like, oh, I'm gonna get you.
Yeah.
From that point on, like even when
forget all these Hooper's fish out here in the water, I'm coming for you.
Yes. And when Hooper's down in the water, like it's smashing that cage, like it's I'm gonna get you, I'm gonna get you, I'm gonna get you. And then when it's coming at Chief Brody, and the boat, which that scene is so good. That boat is sinking and he's like leaning on it, and he's got that M1 Grand, and he's going down and he's firing at it. And the thing's just like, I don't know, you can just hear it. Yeah. And he shoots it and it blows up, and that's a great scene.
Yeah.
But you can just feel that the shark's like, oh, I'm going to get you now. It's not like, oh, I'm hungry. The first couple deaths, it's hungry and it eats, and then it becomes
eats whatever moves. Yeah. This is like what we talked about in Twister, where they kind of give the tornado a bit of a personality or an agenda, if you will, throughout the movie. And the same thing with the shark. Shark doesn't have any agenda. Yeah. Shark wants to eat and swim.
No.
But, they made it personal, so they could go all the way to revenge or whatever. I guess that's how we ended up with Sharknado.
Blow him up.
They both just have they just the ultimate agenda of a shark and a tornado.
Yeah. So one of the greatest lines in cinema history comes in this movie, and it's when Chief is throwing the chum out, and the shark shoots up, and he backs up, and he looks over at Quint, and he's like, "You're gonna need a bigger boat."
Was it you're gonna need a bigger boat? Or I seem to recall that this is one of those lines that is quite often misquoted. And I want to say, whenever I was watching it, I was like, oh yeah, he did kind of say it differently. What did he say?
It's like he either says we're gonna need a bigger boat or you're gonna need a bigger boat.
Yeah, he says you're gonna need a bigger boat. Yeah, that's what IMDb has listed as, is you're gonna need a bigger boat. All right,
but I always heard it as
we're going to need a bigger boat.
That's how it's quoted.
And it is. And I actually that's how I had it wrote down in my notes before I even watched the movie.
Oh, yeah.
And then I watched it and I'm like, wait a minute, what did he say? And I listened because he's, I like rewound it or something. And I'm like, oh, he says you're going to need a bigger boat. That's like one of those, like the Star Wars things, like Luke, I am your father. Like Vader never says, he just says, I am your father.
That's right. Yeah.
But we always remember it as Luke, I am your father.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's like partly like being quoted in a way that, because if you just turned to somebody and said, I am your father, they're going to look at you kind of weird. Like unless they're with you mentally and on the same contextual page, they're not going to understand where you're coming from. But you throw Luke in there at the beginning and they're like, oh, Star Wars, gotcha. And so I think that kind of happens with these a lot, is that quote gets a little tweaked just so that it's got that context built into it. So whenever you say it, everybody understands it. But in this case, I think it's just simply it was misheard, or it was quoted in reference in this way of we're going to need a bigger boat to, for the, to make it like a we thing, if that makes sense. But so that's kind of my thought. You reminded me of one of my other favorite little bits, scenes or whatever to watch. I'll come back to that thought. Is that reaction that Brody has whenever he's chumming the water, and it's the way it's shot. Like he's chumming the water, the shark pops up, and then it instantly cuts, and he shoots up, and he's just like stiff as a board. Oh, and he starts backing up. Yes, that was a fantastic. Like, you think about a shark coming out of the water that close to you, that's the reaction you're going to have. It's not going to be flailing and yelling and screaming and losing your head. It's going to be, oh crap, I need to get away from here. It's that paralyzing fear, that stiff as a board reaction that he had. That was just great. Yeah, for sure. But as we're sitting here talking about it, I'm like, I have not denied that it is a great film. It's a well done film. It's still not something that I'm going to go out of my way to rewatch. But if it's at a certain point in the movie, I'll watch the last half hour of this, no problem. Yeah, like it's fantastic. I think it's all the buildup where I'm like, okay, can we just get to the shark? Because I know it's coming. And but there is like lots of like great little scenes and little bits in here, and it is a great movie. I'll give you that.
It is. I mean, how much influence has this movie had on pop culture over the years?
I mean, we're gonna need a bigger boat. How often is that quoted in something?
Yeah. Or like Back to the Future 2, where it's like Jaws 16 or something like that they're advertising on the.
I think it was Jaws 4D.
Was it 4D? Okay.
Yeah, because I think 3D came out the year before, and then they were teasing that they made it in 3D. Well, in the future they're going to make it in 4D.
In 4D, because
Revenge hadn't come out yet.
Yeah.
But that's we still haven't gotten Jaws 4D. I'm shocked that there isn't a more recent sequel or reboot or anything for this movie. Like, this movie has this, I guess, movie franchise. It hasn't been touched since the was it Jaws the Revenge, which came out when did Jaws the Revenge come out?
90 or 89?
87. So you had Jaws that came out in 77, Jaws 2 came out in 78, Jaws 3D, 1983, just before the greatest movie of all time, and Jaws the Revenge in 1987. But have not had another Jaws movie since. And like I said, I'm surprised that we don't have that hasn't been at least an attempt or any murmurings of a reboot or remake in any way. But glad there isn't. I'm surprised.
I'm okay with that. Like, I feel like, so why I think that movies like this
and movies just in the 70s and 80s and really even into the 90s are so well remembered and loved is because they were pumping out, like, I know this is based on a novel, but they're putting out original content, right? Mm-hmm. For the most part. Like, you know, you look at like the Goonies or like Back to the Future, like those aren't based off of anything. Like they're just based off of an imagination that somebody, the Burbs, Ghostbusters, all that stuff. And now it seems like if you want that, you really have to look at like indie movies. Mm-hmm. But like a lot of the stuff that's coming out in theaters, like big major air quote, you know, movies are like, they're either comic book movies, which I love my comics and I love good comic book movies, but those are really getting pounded into the ground anymore. Yeah. Or they're sequels to movies that came out in the 80s or 90s. I'm like, okay, it's cool they're putting out Beetlejuice 2, but did anybody really ask for Beetlejuice 2? You know what I mean?
It's about 20 years too late as well.
Yeah. And or like you're saying about this, like you haven't heard rumors of it, but like they're let's just remake these old movies with new technology. I don't think it needs to be done. No. Like, I'm not saying there aren't good remakes out there. There have been good remakes. Mm-hmm. But I don't know. I kind of miss the, you know, just
the exploratory nature of movie making in the 80s. Yeah.
Just seeing wild stuff on there, you know.
But at the same time, whenever they do anything new now, mm-hmm. people hate it. And then you make a sequel to something now, and people hate it. You give them exactly what they want, fan service, and they hate it because there's too much fan service. Hate it. And it's just they need to. The problem, I think, is they need to stop trying to satisfy the audience and start making films that they have a vision for, and then let the person that has the vision for it run with that vision. Oftentimes, you hear about these horrible movies and how much the producers started digging into it and started giving their input and giving their notes and insisting on these certain things happening, and not just one but multiple producers from different angles from within the studio, all these different people in the director's ear saying, do this, do that, do this, do that. Hey, wouldn't it be cool if they did this? Or wouldn't it be awesome if they did that? Mm-hmm. And all that stuff gets filtered through a director. And if the director doesn't have the backbone to stand up and say, no, I have a vision and I'm going to do it this way.
Yep.
All that stuff makes its way in, and we end up with Batman and Robin or something like that. And that's just, you know, what happens.
And I think another problem too is the reviews being even not like reviews from like professional, you know, reviewers.
Oh yeah.
But
anybody
like,
can write a review now.
Anybody can write a review now. You like, I can't stand Rotten Tomatoes, and I want to see a movie at face value and not have any preconceived notions of what this is going to be. And I think even trailers now, they'll put on there like Rotten Tomato score, this and this. Don't show me that.
Yeah.
Like, you know, I'm thinking about like, I don't know, some of the newer Star Wars stuff. Like there's just people review bombing like all this stuff. And I'm like, and I see it on like my Facebook feed or whatever. This has got review bombed or whatever. I'm like, dang it. Like
before it even
now
comes
I'm
out.
going to watch this. Yeah. Like now I'm going to watch this with the idea in my head that this might be bad. And I can't just give it my own personal opinion. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I feel like, you know, again, back in the 70s and 80s, like there was no internet. You'll have people like, you know, Roger Ebert or whatever reviewing stuff for the Chicago Sun. Yes.
And they knew what they were, not necessarily that they knew what they were doing, but they spoke from a point of, they spoke as a critic without an agenda. They weren't trying to get a certain number of views or clicks or drive traffic or, you know, be sensational or whatever. And now you see, it's just, it's like you said, it's in my feed all the time. And it's all these clickbaity headlines that are like, that are kind of twisting around and are the headlines like, Jaws movie takes bite out of box office, but was it worth it? And then you're like, oh, well, what was wrong with the movie? And you click on it and you read it, and it's actually a glowing review. But they put that little twist in the title just to get you to click on the article. And so those things drive me nuts. So I really don't read those. But that headline still gets read as you're scrolling through things, and that's what you remember. And so you got all these headlines that are building up in your mind, and it just ruins the experience of going to see a movie. I love, like, I forgot what movie it was. There's been a couple movies recently that were like super hyped up, and there's all this talk around them, and like, okay, so like the new Daredevil Wolverine movie that's coming out, there's a lot of talk and a lot of hype around it. I am purposely ignoring everything I see and hear about it. It's blocked. I don't want any reviews. I don't want any spoilers on it. I want to go into that movie and watch it for what it is and not have any of those preconceived notions. But it's out there already. Like, there are things out there. There are people out there like nitpicking every little bit of the trailer and like all these little like teaser things. And it's like, don't show me. Like, like you caught a glimpse of something for 2 frames. Great. Keep it to yourself. Let me enjoy the reveal during the movie. Don't spoil it for me. Those types of things drive me nuts. Or like a few years ago, there was a movie that I was pretty excited about, and I wanted to go in and watch it without any of those spoilers and everything like that. But Bruce was just starting to get into like watching people reviewing things and talking about movies and stuff like that. And he, I think, just wanted to engage in that conversation with me about this thing that I'm excited about. But he's trying to have this, he's watching all these things and he's trying to have this conversation with me about it before I've even gone to see the movie. And I'm like, I don't want to have this conversation right now. And it was really hard for me to tell him, don't talk to me about this. I don't, I don't think you understand. I want to go into it without all this. I want to go into it and enjoy it for what it is. And so I've kind of like trying to explain that to him was a little difficult. I want to talk to you about it after we watch the movie. I don't want to talk to you about it as we're repeating things that we've heard from other people type of conversation about it. I don't want to have this hearsay conversation. I want to have a conversation about something that we actually did together type of thing. Yeah. And that's kind of I think that ruins a lot of the experience going into these movies. And I don't know, I kind of talk myself in circles, but it gets me riled up. I'm with you.
Yeah. It does me too. And I think that's why like I find this that we do so refreshing, because it's like we rewatch a movie or
can't spoil anything.
No, we've Beverly Hills Cop, I think we both said we hadn't really seen before. Yeah. And then we just give each other our thoughts on it, and it just, I don't know, it feels a lot more organic, and it feels a lot more like it did when we were kids. Yeah. When we would, like, we'd go watch a movie at the theater together, be walking home, be like, oh my gosh, can you believe, like, Will Smith did this, or whatever. That was cool. You remember this part? Yeah, that was cool. That was cool. So
didn't have the conversation in the theater, had the conversation after. Not during the movie, you have the conversation after. Yeah, enjoy the movie and then have the conversation. That's another thing that bothers me, is talking in a movie. I can't stand it.
Oh, man, yeah. So I had a friend one time that he was watching a movie. I don't remember what he was watching, but he was watching a movie, and this guy would like just pulled out his phone. He was talking to somebody on the phone. And he so it's my buddy Daniel, and he's been in the military. He's been over in Afghanistan. Like, he didn't have any problem telling you, like, if you're being an idiot. And he like took the guy's phone and hung it up. And he's like, I've appreciated your commentary, but I'm trying to watch this movie. It's time to shut up. Nice. And the guy quit, I guess. But anyway, I don't know.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Something to aspire to, I suppose.
So I'm going to bring us back to the movie. Yeah. So right after the sharks started attacking the boat on that first night, they're out drinking, and then the sharks they're drinking on the boat, and then the shark starts attacking the boat, and they kind of go back up to the surface of the boat, and they're like checking out, where's the shark and everything like that. And Brody is on the bow of the boat, and he's got the gun, and he's looking out on the water.
Mm-hmm.
Did you notice there was a shooting star that ran behind him in the sky?
I wondered. It was that red thing,
yes.
right?
I didn't know if it was a shooting
like,
star or a flare.
That's
But
what I
it had to
wondered.
be a
Like,
shooting
because
star.
so I'm watching that, and I just briefly saw it,
Yep.
and then I was waiting for it to come out from the other side behind him, and I thought, well, I wonder if that was a tear in the film.
Oh, maybe, yeah.
Or something that they just couldn't edit out. But I doubt it with everything being digital now that they would have, that
They
if
would've
that was a
cleaned it
real
up.
film tear,
Yeah.
that they would have edited that out, you know. So I did notice that, and I wondered if that, you know, what that was. So
Yeah.
I'm glad I wasn't just seeing things.
Yeah, I was wondering, is that a shooting star or flare or a tear in the film? I didn't think about that, but yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
I thought it was interesting.
Yeah.
It's definitely stood out. It was obvious.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't try and hide it, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Didn't edit in post or
No.
anything like that. So
So how was he supposed to, whenever they put him in the cage and they lower him into the water,
Mhm.
how was he supposed to, assuming everything went right, let them know that he's done and he wants to come back up?
yeah, I know. I thought about that. I'm like, does he like bang on the side of the cage, or were they just going to give him a little bit of time? And then, although I guess he can get out of the cage, so maybe if he would have killed it,
He would have
would've
just swam up to the top,
swam up.
I guess.
I don't know, man. He was a brave soul for
Oh,
doing
God,
that.
yeah.
Like, I like when Brody is like, you can't do that. That's too dangerous. And he's like, you know, they're at the point, and he's like, do you have any other suggestions? Because this is what we're gonna do.
This is it.
Like,
This is all we got.
have to kill this thing. Like, there's no other option here. And yeah, just harkens back to just how much I love that character. He's just, I mean, he would just do what had to be done.
That's right.
And he had the knowledge, and I love that.
He's in it
Like
for the
you were saying
science, not the
earlier.
paycheck.
That's right. That's right. Him and Bill would get along great. You know, but that harkens back to what you were saying about Quint, you know, and how they kind of gain that mutual respect of each other, showing the scars and stuff. Because you know, their whole time, like driving out there, whatever, on the boat, you know, he's joking with him, you know, like, well, you've got all that money. Do you really know how to drive this boat, you know, or steer this boat and all this? Yeah. And he's, you know, I don't know. It was really good, that whole dynamic.
Yeah, that was a good one. So whenever they blow up the shark at the end, and it creates all the little bits of shark in the water, that's essentially chum in the water. Aren't they just attracting more sharks?
More sharks.
Is that how we got Jaws 2? Is that what happened? There's just more sharks in the water now?
That's it. Yeah. But they were fine swimming back, you know, because you see at the very end when the credits roll, they've made it to the beach.
They made it.
And I liked the way that ended. I was fine with that. A lot of times when I watch movies, I'm like, oh, I want a little more resolution, but there wasn't really any other resolution that needed done. Like they needed to kill the shark.
Yeah, that was it.
And they
Mission
killed
accomplished.
it. And we don't have to see, you know, him, you know, the mayor and the town praising them. Like, we don't need to see any of that. We just...
No parades. Mayor loses the election next year or whatever.
Yeah. Chief Brody for mayor.
Yeah, right. So okay, so that's interesting. They blow up the shark. There's nothing. I mean, I guess there's like the bottom half of the shark is still relatively intact. But have you ever been to or seen in Universal Studios? They have like the little section for Jaws. They have like a little pier, and they have like a shark hanging by its tail with its, you know, head tilted back and its mouth open for Jaws. And it's like the Bruce the Shark Jaws shark. But if they blew up the shark, what are they referencing there with that shark being strung up?
The tiger shark that they killed that didn't have anything to do with the attacks.
Well, but it's a great white shark that they have. It's
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah. It's like the full size, like the same size as Bruce the Shark and everything. It's like this big giant great white shark, and they have it all hooked up. So I don't know, maybe it was the second one that they strung up a shark in, maybe? I don't know. I never saw the second one. But
I mean, what else would they have though? I mean, I guess they could have like you kind of walk out to the orca, you know, and then you've got Jaws up on. I don't know.
Yeah. I don't know. I just, now that I've thought about it, that kind of like, that stands out to me as like, well, that's like, what are you, that's not a scene in the movie. That's not from any part of it. I guess you're just kind of like, stretching the imagination there or whatever with it.
Yeah.
But that was a little thought I had there. Just wanted to express. So Bruce the shark, I hinted at there. Did you know that was the name of the shark in the movie that they named it?
No.
Yeah, so the little animatronic shark was named Bruce the shark for behind the scenes.
Okay.
Like that's what the name they had given to the shark was Bruce the shark, which was referenced in Finding Dory or Finding Nemo.
Finding Nemo, because that's what I thought. That's what I thought you were referencing was Finding Nemo.
Nope. They referenced it in Finding Nemo by naming him Bruce the shark. Yeah, so that's a nod to Jaws.
That's cool.
Bonus fact for you there. Yeah.
I like it.
That was interesting.
I like it.
And another little fun fact for you. Susan Backlinie, who plays the shark victim and that first girl that goes swimming and she gets eaten by the shark, suffered severe bruising from the rigging that they used to yank her back and forth in the water. Like they had her tied to some rigging, and there was some cables going off of either side of her to some pulleys off camera and then back up to the beach, and they just had big riggers back there on the beach just yanking back and forth on that cable and just getting her to thrash around in the water. But it bruised her up a lot during the filming, and so a lot of the times that she's screaming out in legitimate pain. Like she's really feeling it, she's really hurting. But she was interviewed, and she says that she got recognized for that role all her life, and just always had people coming up to her and telling her that she really scared the heck out of them with that performance, and they didn't want to go into the water because of her. And so her whole life she was recognized for that. She recently passed away in May 2024 at the age of 77. So little moment for her and appreciation of the role, but.
This episode's dedicated to her then.
That's right. To Susan Backlinie. It's for you.
Yeah.
But I thought that was a couple little fun facts for you there. Bruce the shark. Susan was bruised a lot during the filming, and she was screaming out in legitimate pain.
Yeah. Wow. Well, it was awful believable. So,
yeah.
Well, I'm about tapped out. I don't really have much else to say on this episode. I've loved Jaws ever since I first watched it. I couldn't tell you the first time I watched it, but I know I've seen it multiple times. And, I just, like I said, it's in my top 10. I love it so much. So, you have any final thoughts on it?
I suppose I'm going to say better than I remembered. Better than I remembered. For sure. It's still not, I'm not going out of my way for it, but I enjoyed it. It's a fun movie. It's a good movie. It's a great movie. I will give it that it is a great movie, and I can appreciate it for the achievement that it is. I don't know. I'm just not watching it on my own unless I have to.
Yeah. Fair enough.
But so next week, we'll be coming back to you with. We're getting close to our. We're getting close to the end here, folks. Our Blockbuster.
Not of the podcast.
No, not of the podcast. Of our Blockbuster Summer Rewind. And we got 2 more left. Next week, we'll be doing Raiders of the Lost Ark. Lost Ark?
One of my favorites. Of course, it seems like almost every movie that we announce on here, I'm like, it was one of my favorites.
Yeah.
Well, we're talking about movies we loved.
Yeah,
so,
that's the point. We're not going to talk about movies that we don't love.
Yeah, exactly.
So, next week, Raiders of the Lost Ark. And we've had a fun time with Jaws. And we reached another checkpoint, my friends. Sharing is caring. Reviews help a lot. And until next time, we'll see you around.
We'll see you then. This Podcast Takes Tokens is a Clay Street production.
All right, we're back. We had that question that we'd asked at the beginning of the episode. And side note, I know sometimes I have some noise going on here. When I listen back to these, I kind of laugh sometimes. If you hear any jingle, I do have a cat that walks around here, and I've heard his bell a couple times. And we have a dog, our dog that I unfortunately usually have to put outside when we record because he's very, very noisy. And he doesn't always like being outside. So if you hear any whining, that's not one of my kids. It's my dog out there. So. But anyway, before we get into the question, we did have some comments. You got them for us, Deric?
Yes, we had a couple comments. On the Independence Day, the 4th episode, we had 2 comments. But I think these came from a couple of the shorts that we started putting out on YouTube. Allie Watson, IP7IL, commented, "I loved The Wild West. It was so good to me. Sorry, Allie. I loved The Wild West. It was so good to me." So they really enjoyed The Wild West. Wild West.
Wild Wild West. Yeah.
The movie.
Yeah.
Yes.
And,
I gotta admit, it was a fun movie when I watched it, but I think it's been sullied in my memory by the naysayers. All the people that talk about how much it's a bad movie, I think have influenced my viewpoint there. Yep. And so I'm going to have to add it into our rotation here at some point, and we're going to have to rewatch it, and I'm going to have to make a new, fresh opinion on Wild Wild West.
Yeah.
Will Smith.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of my thoughts on that.
Yeah. I mean, I'd like to rewatch it and see if I enjoy it now as much as I did back then. So kind of different reasons why we're rewatching it, but we'll have to see where we land on it.
Yeah, that'll be later on down the line. We got another comment on the Independence Day episode. Again, one of the shorts, and this one comes from Paul Schiffer, SCHIRF 9259. And I think we need to issue a little retraction for Paul here. He says it's not a satellite. And I remember now he's referencing to us in our conversation. Do you remember what?
It was that probe that they've sent out. Yes, Paul, you are absolutely right. We'll get to talking on here, and sometimes we just say what's quickest thing to come to our head. Yep. And of course, we're going to be don't always get them right, but appreciate you pointing that out to us. So.
But I mean, it could be a satellite. It just may not have made its complete orbit yet.
There you go.
Maybe its orbit is just super wide. For right now, it's a probe. It's going off in a particular direction, but for all we know, it could curve back around and make its way to us. And
there you go.
Yeah, we have an orbit. That makes it a satellite.
Yeah,
I'm holding out for satellite.
You're holding out for satellite.
I think we may be right.
Probe
I think
right
it's going to prove us right on the end. We'll find out in 29, 32, 57.
Yes.
But that was a fun little one.
Yeah.
The Burbs, we had a comment from our boy Teddy Roosevelt.
Teddy!
3119.
Yes.
Teddy Roosevelt, yes. He says, what a great film. Thank you for covering this one. I've probably seen it 5 or 6 times. Well, Teddy, you're not alone. My brother here, this is one of his favorite movies, and it's the whole reason why we covered that particular film. We enjoyed the watch it. Well, I should say you enjoyed the watch of it. I felt about the same coming out of it as I did going into it, but it was fun all the same. So
Teddy, there's certain people that enjoy this movie, and then there's people that are wrong about this movie. So
there we go.
That's how it goes. That's just how it goes. Not everybody can be perfect. So
I'm okay being wrong.
All right. Well, that all our comments that we had?
Yep, that was all of our comments.
Okay. We appreciate each and every one of those. Again, if you want to leave comments on
on the YouTube channel, or you can email us at thispodcasttakestokens@gmail.com. Leave us a review, and you can interact with us on Spotify if you're one of our Spotify listeners. We love hearing from you guys. So, keep those up. We like reading them.
We just did Jaws, and I had a little note, and I meant to come back to it, and I didn't get to come back to it, and I wanted to say, I'm surprised that you didn't start it out with a little something like this. Token goes into the podcast goes online. Audience is online. Our audience.
I looked through that monologue, and I was trying to find something to use, and I just couldn't make it work.
Couldn't make it work.
So that works. Maybe we'll just edit that out and throw it on the beginning of the episode. Anyway, icebreaker question that we had. So if you could remove any one thing from existence.
Oh, that's right.
Ever. It will have never been in existence. What would that be?
Oh, I know I started this out by saying I have a fantastic one, but I really didn't. I was just messing with you. I don't know. I was buying time.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I feel like there's a good amount of answers that you could throw in here, and some of them would be like, cheesy, like, guns for world peace, or, war, or something like that. But, man, I don't know. I really don't know. If there's one thing that I could remove from time to have never existed, what would it be? And do I need a why, or just like I can just anything I want?
You don't have to have a why. You don't have to.
All right. I think it would be the Burbs. No, I'm just kidding.
No. Okay, this podcast is done indefinitely. I'm gone.
No. Yeah, I don't know. You know what? I do know.
Okay.
As much as I enjoy the convenience of it, digital media.
Mm-hmm.
Digital media. Just because I miss going to a video store and just walking the aisles and picking out a movie or two that I'm going to watch that weekend at some point.
Yeah.
And it's lost. It's something we'll never do again. And I miss that. Yeah. Now I sit and I scroll through endless feed of dreck, of just whatever that I have little to no interest to watch, looking for anything to entertain me. And I think I spend more time scrolling than I actually do watching a movie every night, or a TV show, or whatever the case may be. But digital media. I'm going to remove that from the except for this right here. We're going to keep YouTube and our podcast and all.
That's the thing. There's like implications, but we're not going to discuss the implications. We're just going to, because mine. So that's a good point. Like, so mine was going to be kind of a silly one, but it was mosquitoes, because I just can't stand mosquitoes. They've always bit me up. Even with bug spray or whatever, I've always had an issue with them liking me. But now that you mention that, and this is completely against how we operate to promote this show, but like I would say social media. Like just get rid of social media, because I feel like there's just there's a lot of good from social media, but it is outweighed by just the cesspool of negativity that is in social media. And that's my answer. Social media.
All right.
Yeah. Let us know what your answer is. Leave it in the comments, or Spotify or whatever. We'd love to hear it. So.
All right. Well, until next time, here's to swimming with bow-legged women.
Yes. We'll see you then, guys.
See you.
Swimming with bow-legged women. I forgot about that line.